Hello and hi, welcome to this video, and in this video I will just be talking a little bit about what I would include if I were to write a letter to my teenage self, my younger self, my past self. What would I say in the letter? Let's begin. So to begin, I would say to my teenage self, seeing as you had a really strong rebellious streak, and to not hold that against yourself, the fact that you had a rebellious streak, basically. You tell perhaps people around you that you're not perhaps in agreement or in alignment with what's rules have been set. So let's give an example. Let's say you apply for an organization, there's a group, there's a team, there are rules, there's a code of conduct, and if you don't follow that code of conduct, it's a strike, you're out. Or you get a strike on your record and you are being on probation or something like that. So I would say I would start with addressing that you shouldn't be too ashamed of living with a rebellious streak. Not change, but you still aren't afraid to be different and be different from the crowd, in essence of not following the rules in the same way perhaps others might be, because you never know how somebody follows the rules nowadays or any days or in the future or the past or whenever in history, how people follow rules and how being a rule breaker is different from having a rebellious streak. Because obviously being a rule breaker, somebody who just breaks rules because that's something they are, that they do because they want to, versus having a rebellious streak, genuinely feeling like something's not right inside and not being ashamed of maybe feeling like, obviously having the shame for feeling like the only one with those rebellious needs or the rebellious streak inside you, where you feel as though you oppose what it is that is being given, presented to you in front of you that day, let's say, and how having shame around it just makes the rebelliousness more rebellious, because of the fact that you're not necessarily just breaking the rules because, let's say the environment is very high expectations to behave a certain way, so you're very much expected to behave. So if you're expected to perform and expected to behave in this environment, obviously if you don't agree with things, it will show more maybe perhaps than others. So do not be ashamed that you feel different to others and that other people don't necessarily show maybe their disagreements or their rebelliousness in person, or they can cover up through acting skills that people learn, I don't know, through life. Yourself to not feel so bad about it, because actually you learn more about your individual opinion, identity. You separate from the crowd. It might feel a little bit sad because you not feel like you're, when you don't feel like you relate to anybody, or you don't feel like you're one of the crowd, or you push your boundaries, and to be grateful that you have the bravery and the honesty with yourself to know that this isn't just a phase, and this isn't just a need to or a love for breaking rules, and this is an art or an acting theatre show. No, it's not necessarily. More so it's don't feel okay with what's happening, so you're just going to it's going to be a no, or it's going to be I refuse to agree, or I refuse to agree with what's going on here. You have every right to express that. I don't know why, as my teenage self, I don't know why I ever had the feeling of, oh, I have to accept what everyone else is accepting. So it's like, no, you have every right to refuse and say, this thing right here, I don't like it, but if you like it, go ahead, have it. So don't feel ashamed that you are on this I don't like it phase train for yourself, and it's only you on there, by the way, and going down this downward spiral of why am I the only one who doesn't like it, and all these kinds of things. But at the end of the day, if you didn't have that, you wouldn't be able to learn to think for yourself in the ways that you can think for yourself and are able to in your circumstances, considering your environment and your The next thing I would include in the letter is not asking for help is kind of a double-edged sword, because of the fact that when you do rebel, unfortunately, because there are other people in the world, some people might just be offended by that or upset about the fact that you don't agree with certain things. You're being challenged, essentially. And are you going to give in? Are you going to just, not have something to stand for yourself and just be your own person? Or are you just going to kind of be passive about what it is that you believe, or what it is that you like about or don't like or dislike about the situation that is happening? Perhaps this organization or this team or this group is there for you to grow your skills. So when I mean rebellion, I'm not necessarily saying like going out of your way to rebel, but perhaps this is your daily life. It's something that you do to educate yourself, to gain an education. And what happens is, oh no, you kind of start to disagree with people, and you don't agree with anything that's sort of occurring, and you don't like it, and all these things, and that it's okay to not like it, essentially. And that the rules of the place, yes, they're there to follow, but also you are there to grow. So if you're not growing, it's not necessarily just mere rebellion, it's also, it might not be fit for you. So asking for help and actually speaking about it is a big advice I'd give to my teenagers. Don't ever, I know this is such an oversaid thing when you're young, you hear it the most, but don't ever hesitate to just say to somebody who's in authority at that place that you are learning, to say to them, I don't feel right about any of this, quote unquote, this is fill in the blanks, what my problem is. I don't like it. I don't want to do it. Majority of the time, if you're able to identify it enough before you speak to somebody, because of the fact that the last point I would include in this letter is scheduling, and how busy some people's schedules are, and that sometimes life is just a mere crossover of scheduling and schedules. And sometimes some people take their schedule so seriously, you just never end up really able to have one-to-one time with them where they can actually pay attention to your needs and your issues and your situation. And so with that being said, obviously, making sure that once you are able to identify a problem, be it your issue at that time, to be able to communicate it to somebody who could possibly help you. And that sometimes that takes away you don't feel as ashamed of the things you do out of rebellion, and the things you do out of anger or out of a mood, having a mood swing, quote unquote, and how that quote unquote mood swing makes you, make a fool out of yourself or some sort, how that's a normal thing for a growing person, human being, and that there's no shame in that, and that perhaps it might not go the way that you think the worst way might go if you don't ask for help, if you do ask for help. And yeah, so just bring it up, and still bring it up to the person in charge, because at the end of the day, you can just say to them, I'm just not working for me, and I don't know what it is. Is this something I can fix, or is it better I leave? Like, shall I exit this situation? Shall I leave? I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to withdraw myself from this environment. I don't think this is what's best for me at the moment. So that's what I'd write in the letter, essentially. And I don't think I would want to write too much to my teenage self, because I'd noticed that when you're a teenager, you don't want to talk about it. You don't want to talk about what it is that's happening. And it's not necessarily what it does to you, you don't talk about, but you don't talk about what's happening. And it's almost like, how do I tell somebody what's happening in my life, that it is happening? And even if I do, would they even care? Or does it really matter what's happening? And yes, it does. Sometimes as a teenager, you have shame for the fact that there's things going on that maybe other people are not facing. So that's all I would actually have to say to my teenage self, because and I was a teenager who suffered in silence, and all my suffering was in silence, so nobody really knew what was going on. Anyways, Another thing I would write in the letter, last thing actually I would add, aside from all of that, to conclude, how your actions have consequences. And unfortunately, you can't go back in time and fix them. You can't go back in time and undo what you did like you can on Photoshop, for example. You can't go back in time and say to yourself, I didn't do that. You know, you eventually have to become strong enough for rooting for you, for example, or people who are supportive of you and who care about you, want to see you happy and want to see you succeed, and how that affects them because you're not succeeding and you're not happy, but you're also keeping it in, and you're also keeping yourself away, like you're sort of, how do you describe it? How do you say it? I mean, you would say pushing people away. So how those things, you can't undo those things, unfortunately. So to try and remember that time is precious. I mean, not events, but those organizations, how they helped you value your time, taking accountability for your actions, but also knowing when to apologize, and that not being afraid to apologize to somebody you've wronged, and how that there's no shame in that either, and how much that you might actually see how all of the stress kind of melts away when you do approach and confront an issue head on and be able to apologize up front and ask if you know, will you forgive me, and ask, genuinely tell them what you're sorry about, but also what they did, what you did to them, and if they can, you know, accept your apology, if they can forgive you, and if they do, how that mends your future days to come, because of the fact that there's less tension around and stress around the subject of that misconduct or that misbehavior or that issue, and that a lot of issues can be managed if you're able to have shame over, if that makes sense. So like, for example, it was wrong, maybe you did something wrong, but there's no shame to have a rebellious streak, and that there's nothing wrong to be doing things that are wrong, essentially, number one. But then number two, to not necessarily hold it against yourself and be able to accept it and be like, hi, I made this really big mistake, I'm really sorry, and own up to it. Show yourself that you're not afraid, you're not going to hold it against yourself, you're not going to shame yourself, you're not going to hold it against yourself that you did something wrong, and you just get over it quicker that way if you just face it or head on and not avoid it, basically. And that's it. That's all I'd like to talk about in this video. That's kind of all I wanted to talk about and say. I just wanted to say that to my teenage self, because of the fact that when you are a teenager, sometimes things don't feel like they're moving, and I never really ever had anybody to talk to about this stuff, so it was just kind of a way to kind of talk to myself without, you know, in a way where I can document it and maybe listen to it another time and see it another time if I feel like it and need to hear it from myself, because of the fact that I do like to listen to myself a lot more than I do like to listen to others and or like other people's advice. So that's just me anyway. So thank you for listening if you were, and if there were some things that resonated, I'm really happy for you, and I'm glad. If you would like to give this video a like if you have found anything that resonated in this video, and you know, even subscribe if you are enjoying my videos so far on this channel. And yeah, that's it for today. So thank you very much and take care. Goodbye. Bye bye.